Hi, this is Magnus and here is game 6 of the Great Chess Miniatures. This time I've chosen for a game played by Magnus Carlsen. It's a game that he played when he was young, in 2004. He played this in the Moscow Aeroflot Open tournament against Grandmaster Sergei Dormatov. Now, at that time, Magnus Carlsen was rated only 2484, so under the 25 limit. His opponent Dormatov was rated 2591, so more than 100 points more than Carlsen. But Magnus won this game in a very beautiful way, in only 19 moves. So let's have a look. Knight to f3, f5, d3. Strange opening. Magnus is playing d3 to prepare e4. Actually, the most common moves in this position are g3 or d4, but Magnus in his young age used to play these strange ideas, and this time with success. Opponent answered d6 and Magnus played e4. And after e5 we have a kind of reversed King's Gambit. Not very common position. Let's have a look how the game continued. To knight to c3, knight to c6, and now Magnus took on f5. Bishop takes f5, and now he challenged the center by playing d4. So here black has to make a decision: to take on d4, to advance this pawn, or to ignore the whole thing. In the game, knight takes d4 was played. Let's have a short look at e4, because that's an interesting idea. Advancing this pawn looks very aggressive, but on the other hand, if white plays d5 here, then this pawn on e4 cannot longer be supported by the d pawn. If here black takes on f3, then white takes on c6. Now taking on g2 would be wrong because of bishop takes g2 supporting the c6 pawn, so here b takes c6 is needed, and then queen takes f3. And the pawn structure of black has been damaged. He has this double pawn here, and white can develop his pieces easily, so this position is nice for white. Let's go back to the game now. Here black answered knight takes d4. Knight takes d4 followed, e takes d4, queen takes d4. Now black continued developing with knight to f6. White plays bishop to c4, and black answers c6. Now with c6, black is preparing two ideas. One is to play b5 and b4 perhaps. The other one is to play d5 and block this diagonal for the bishop. Bishop to g5 was played, and indeed black continued with b5. The question is whether it would have been better to take the pawn on c2, because white is actually sacrificing this pawn on c2. But it's not very wise to go for material when you are behind in development. That's one of the main rules. Here, if bishop takes c2, then white would simply castle, and if black plays d5, we can give a check on e1. Now here, if bishop to e7, bishop takes f6 could follow. And after g takes f6, we can sacrifice on d5. Bishop takes d5, c takes d5, knight takes d5, and just have a look at all the pressure now at this bishop on e7. So the black king is alone in the center, in open space. White has developed almost all his pieces, and the pressure is enormous. That means that if we go back here after this check on e1, rook e1, king to f7 would have been a better idea, but then still you don't want to have your king walking around like that. So this pawn grabbing on c2 is understandable that black didn't go into that, but instead of that he played b5. Bishop to b3, bishop to e7. So black is preparing to castle. Now white castles queenside. Already the position is very nice for white. He's ahead in development, these pieces are active, and the black king is still in the center. Here black played queen to d7, and Carlsen continued with developing his last piece, the rook from h1, activating it by placing it on e1. That's one of the rules that we learn as well. When you're not sure what to do, look at your worst piece and try to improve its position. That's what Carlsen does here, pinning this bishop on e7, and well, the position becomes difficult now for black. Black played here king to d8. Now let's have a look what would happen if he would do a, let's say, more natural move like castling queenside. Although very natural, it doesn't look very natural, because well, this is a bit vulnerable here. The pawn's already advanced, so perhaps white could try a4 already and start an attack on the queen side. So that's not what black wanted, and that's the reason perhaps why he played king to d8, getting out of this pin and thinking that his king might be safe in the center. But what he didn't realize is that the young Magnus had a surprise for him. Here comes a very beautiful positional sacrifice. Rook takes e7. White sacrifices the exchange and gets a very nice attack. In fact, we can say that this bishop on e7 was one of the main defenders of the pawn on d6, and was also the way of stopping this pin on this diagonal. So by rook takes e7, after queen takes e7, the d6 pawn has become more vulnerable, and the f6 knight is pinned now. Now here white didn't take, of course, on d6, because then after trading of queens the power of the attack diminishes. So what he did is he played queen to f4. Another strong idea would be to play queen to c5, by the way, again attacking the pawn here on d6 and the bishop here, but queen to f4 was played in the game. Now there is a threat of taking here, and there is a threat of taking the bishop. Black replied bishop to d7, saving the bishop, and again white didn't take the pawn but increased the pressure once more. And that's what's so instructive about this game, I find. White is constantly now increasing pressure. He played knight to e4, so putting more pressure on f6 and on d6. Black answered d5, and now white took on f6. What to do? Taking on f6, of course, nonsense, because then you lose the queen. After g takes f6, bishop takes f6. So what he did is he played h6. The bishop went to h4. The same difficulty is here. You cannot take on f6 because of bishop takes f6. So black played here g5. Now this looks as if everything is being solved, but that's not the case. Magnus Carlsen played here a beautiful move, and that is queen to d4. He's threatening knight takes d5 with attack on the queen and attack on the rook on h8. And this is a threat that's very difficult to stop. Let's say here, by the way, Sergei Dolmatov resigned. He could have played rook to f8 to save his rook, but then knight takes d5 as well. After c takes d5, queen takes d5, the other rook is attacked on a8. If this rook moves, then we simply play bishop to g3. So as a result of this, the king, the black king, is still in the center. It's filled with threats like bishop to d6, attacking here. All the pieces of white are participating actively in this attack, and well, let's say that black wants to defend against this threat, bishop to d6, by playing rook to f6. What do we have here? Let's have a look. I haven't examined this one in my preparation, but let's have a look what we could do. Well, a check here, for example. The king cannot go to c7, and if here queen to e8, let's see, queen to h7 perhaps, or bishop to e5, attacking the rook, threatening to take. That's a good idea. Bishop to e5. So bishop to e5. If queen takes queen, then first we take the rook on f6 with check, and then we take the queen. So here rook to c6 could be an idea. Well, we can still get pressure on this d file, so we keep black in a very defensive position. Perhaps later give a check on f6, or take the pawn on b5 if black tries to defend this pawn. Well, let's see, perhaps rook d3, rook e3, maneuver like that, or simply defending here this pawn. You know, actually white doesn't have any hurry in finishing the game and checkmating the black king, because black needs all his heavy pieces to defend the king. So white can simply maneuver and increase the pressure, keep the pressure high to win this game. Anyway, one of the key moments in this game was, I'll go back to that moment here, after king to d8, the sacrifice rook takes e7. And another very important moment is here, when white doesn't take rook takes d6. That would also have been good, but he plays knight to e4, so bringing more pieces into the attack. And that's, I think, the biggest lesson in this miniature, that it's so important to use all our pieces in the attack, let them work together and increase the pressure as much as possible, in this case against an uncastled king. Well, I hope you found this interesting, and I'll see you next time on YouTube. Goodbye.